The heintige Rambam, today's Rambam, Hilchos Gezelah v'Aveda, Perek Aleph Halacha Tes. We're going to talk about a series of halachas. Halacha Tes, Yud, Yud Aleph, and Yud Beis. I'm going to begin to focus on Tes and then move on to the others. So the Rambam talks here about a very one of the averes that I brought down in the Aseres Hadibros, and that is the lav of leisachmaid. The general translation is you shouldn't covet somebody's items, etc. And here we're going to read it. Kalachimed avdoi, oy amasoi, oy beisoi, the K-love shel chavera. Somebody covets somebody's slave, maidservant, home. K-love, his items, his vessels, his ix diamond ring, his gold chains. This is the condition. You cover the way the guy looks. That's not, doesn't go into the, anything that you can buy from him, that's the condition. Don't stop over there. The hir bedalav berayim, and he tried many ways. One was by getting people to help. The hiftzeba, and he pushed him till he bought it from him. Now here's the interesting part of the Rambam, and this is what creates the controversy. Despite the fact that he paid him more than they're worth, they get him a lot of money. Could have given him for his home twice the value. Yet he says, "Areza oiver meloisa say shanem meloisachmed." You're able to laugh. Okay, good. It says leisachmed. You're not allowed to covet. They ain't loikin alav them nesha aim by maisa. No maisa. I mean, maisa. We'll find out soon. There's a problem with that. We need the maisa. The ain't even belabs there. Now then, everybody makes a condition again. Till he takes the chayfetz, till he actually takes it. It has to have a desire that ends up in action. Okay, so the Ravid, on the fact that you don't get malchus because it's a lav without an action. So we know we need a lav shev and mice to get malchus. So the Ravid says, I haven't seen anything more outlandish. What do you mean there's no maisa? There's no greater maisa than taking somebody's item. So he says, if you want to say that he doesn't get malchus because he has to pay back. That's why you don't get malchus, because you have to return. Okay, I'm not going to get into all the details, but there's a sugya in the Gemara which discusses the Indian of taloyu of his oven. If you force somebody to sell, so the Gemara says it's a sale. Why? Because at the end, the guy's getting his money, being paid, he agrees. So the Maggid Mishnah explains that the machlekes between the Ravid and the Rambam is in twofold. According to the Ravid, such a case here will not work. The sale is null and void, and therefore he claims he's got to return it. According to the Rambam, the sale is a good sale. Now, not a question of the sale. But so that takes care of that. Well, what about the time that that it's not allowed. What do you mean it's not allowed? So if I can't, sagt der Rabbi, sagt the Mishnah. The Rambam Resources say that even if the guy agrees to sell, it's a sale. So you can't tell me that the act of taking is a Maisa. Okay, what does he mean exactly? He needs a beer. What do you mean? It is a Maisa. Good, so the guy agreed. But it's not all taking. He gave it to you. This could be, that's the one. But the Magen Mishnah, that's another question. There's a sugya in Masechtes Tmura, which is famous sugya, Kol Milsa the Amar Achmana Leisavid, Iavid, Mahani Alei Mahani. Machlekes Abayin Rav. Means like the Torah says, don't do this, don't buy this, don't sell this, don't take this, and you took it. Is the act of taking become yours? The act of buying become yours? Many such cases. And it's a two-block sugya and it goes through a bunch of rayas back and forth. And so he asks, how could you buy it? He gives an interesting answer. I'm not going to get into the answer now because it's going to take us too much time and we want to focus on on the discussion that we have. But the question is a strong question. So end result, according to the Magen Mishnah, the Isser is to try to buy it. You must buy it at the end, but the buying is gone with the ratzon of the seller. The seller agrees in the end. Sorry. So I want to just go through a couple of points before we get into the details that we want to get into. Sefer HaMitzvahs of the Rambam, Mitzvah Reish Samachei, talks about the lav of Leisachmed. And now is description that we were warned from from focusing lasos tachbula, to come up with a plan. In order to come up with a plan to buy what the other person has. And he goes on to bring psukim, and then that's all I want. It's only I want it. Then has to be a ma'isa. So he ends up. So hina is barlach. So what is the lav? Gezelah lav yazim meherim achanikach latzmeinu adava sheinu chayin demesa. We should, until we plan and we take it. Even if you buy it, then you're able to sell. So it's clear that you need a mice. You need a mice. Yeah. Mice is not a lot. You're not over with the mice. Yeah, it's a lav shem mice. Then there is a second lav in the second set of Aseres Adibros. The Torah replaces the word leisachmed with the word leisachave. So the Rambam explains there it's desiring, just the desiring. But he adds, and to desire it. Maybe why? Because this is going to bring to a tachbula l'kneise. So therefore the Torah is at least to save it. He says they're not the same thing. One is not to buy it, the other one is not to want it. And then he explains. He gives a very graphic description of what happens there. If you see something very nice by a friend, he invited you to the house, you saw this beautiful menorah. If you therefore Gavra machshavtei olav, this avabai, his thoughts became very strong and he desired it. So then you're able to stop it. And if that love of that thing, the desire, till you started trying to buy it, and you wouldn't stop till you bought it. So then, and he succeeded. Okay, we'll get the picture, but we have problems. We're going to talk about the problems soon. Halacha Yud in the Rambam and our Rambam that we learned before, the Perek Aleph, Halacha Tes and Gezelah Vaveda, there's Halacha Yud and there's Halacha Yud Aleph and Halacha Yud Beis. And I wanted to read his descriptions. He had spoken about Leisachmei. Now he speaks about Leisus Ave. Kolamis Ave Beisa Yishta V'Kelev Shachaver. Here he puts in his wife also. So he says, sorry, we were having a problem here, and I thought I'd have to take care of it. So Halacha Yud, we said. So anybody the Chef Shalik Neisen, so now Kiva Shachoshav Beliboy. Hey Yikne Dovazer. Once you started thinking, how am I going to buy this? Vinifta Liboy Bedover, and he desired it. Avar Beloisase. He's over on Leisa Shanama Leisus Ave. What's the there? Now, here is really interesting. Halacha Yud Aleph, the Rambam suddenly goes into a psychological evaluation of a person. And he says as follows. Hataive mevil de chimud. Chimud mevil de gezel. So he says like this. Shem le'ratzu abaylim limkar avabi shehir belam bedomim v'hiftzeh bereyim yavel de gezel. He'll come to steal. If a person really desires something, he's going to desire. If a person desires it, he's going to come to chimud, which means he's going to try to buy it. If that doesn't work, he's going to try to steal it. And then if the Bailam don't let you steal it, you're going to kill him. And he brings a raya from Achav and Navas. What is this doing here? Why is this here? Next. Yeah. And then Halacha Yud Beis. So now that we've told you this progression of the human psyche, so the Rambam says, Holamadata, so now you will learn Shamas Ava Iver Belav Echod, Va'akaina Dovish Ava Behivtze Shehivtze Bebailim and Bakoshemehen Iver Bishnei Lavin. So now that you know this human being, as we described him, if he just desires Lav Echod, if he buys it with that this whole process, to Lav. That's why it says Leisach and Leisach Ava. And third, this is the Bella in Gezelah. If he actually stole it, he's over 3 lav. What does it mean that every time he's every gospel is over 3 lav? Unlikely. Unlikely. You have to go through that process, obviously. So what is he saying? Why are you over 3 lav when you steal? So we'll get to that. So the main question is, what is this lav? Desiring, buying. What's the lav Leisach Ava? Desiring, not desiring, what's going on here? Very hard to get a good picture, but we have a few issues. We have the issue of the Ravid, which is, how can it be a Lashem and Maisa? Clearly the Rambam states over and over again, you got to do a Maisa. So the Magamish's answer that, because the guy is agreeing, but it doesn't matter. I have to do the Maisa. Still a Maisa. To say a svara that since the guy is giving it to me, it's not called I'm taking it. I take it. I have to take it at some point. Next. The way he writes it in different places, he starts off one way, then ends up in the Sefer HaMitzvos. He's not a word about buying, just in order to buy. And at the end, he says you have to buy it. In the Rambam, he says it twice. In the beginning, until you convince him and you buy it, then at the end it says you have to buy it. What's this? What is the lav? And then when it comes to Leisach Ava, what's desiring is us. And then he says that if you again, and if you desire it so much that you make him happen, then you're over on the second lav. Why that repetition? And there he stresses, if your desire becomes so strong that you work. What's the line? He starts off and writes, since you thought, hey, what is that supposed to mean? So if Mitzvah, he writes, Shehiziranu mihasum machshosenu lachmoid. Doesn't write anything about hey, I'm sorry. In Sefer HaMitzvahs, he does. There's not a word about hey. Actually, Stadel answered that if I can't. No. Here in Rambam, he writes hey. Now, what is this sudden psychological evaluation that the Rambam brings? To the point of killing somebody. Why? What does he have to tell us that? It doesn't even end up saying that. And if he killed him, he's over for lavin. Let him say that too. Let him say that. But why? Why here? What's that? What does this have to do with anything? This is a nice concept. If anything, put it at the end of the Perokim. Put it at the end of where you finish talking about the Yahweh. The Rambam very often throws an Indian Musri in. Where is this? What is this doing here? Why is he suddenly evaluating the human being? And then, what's the holamadita? Now you learn. Well, what did you learn now that you didn't know before? And again, if he killed, he should be either for lavin. Okay, there is no question that there's a lot of unclear, uncharted direction where the Rambam is talking about here. So what's he trying to say? So I want to suggest that Halacha Yud Aleph, where he goes through the psychological evaluation, is not just the psychological evaluation. This is it. This is the description. This is the decision. This is what the lav is all about. The lav is about desiring something that leads to other things. That's the lav, doing something that leads to the next thing. And that's why he goes through this system. Don't do this because this leads to that. This leads to next, and that leads to next. Well, first of all, that explains to us why he doesn't add anything about Leisirtzach. He just tells us what could happen and why he even tells us that. Because he needs to have something that the action could lead to. So if Leisachmaid, if Leisigzel won't lead to Leisirtzach, it will not be part of this system of the Leisachmaid Lav. In other words, there's a Leisachmaid aspect is not just about desiring. It's about desiring in a way that will lead to the next level. Okay, so now we can start getting a picture of what goes on. The shiur, not the Aveira, the shiur of each one is that which brings you to the next. So that's why when you think, hey, yikne davaze, if you have a desire, you walk into somebody's house and you see a beautiful ornament, a beautiful piece of furniture, a beautiful whatever, or a beautiful house, and you say to yourself, boy, that would be a nice thing. Let me see if I can go to my real estate agent and find some houses like that. There is no Aveira mitzad leis sisave. Nothing. Nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying it's a holy thought, but it's not this isser. It's okay to have interests in things if, again, I'm not getting into the higher levels of Aveda that a person should refrain from desires in general, but all these things, I'm not getting into all those things. I'm just saying about halacha. Love Leisas Ava. Leisas has nothing to do with that. Leisas Ava is only an Isser according to the Rambam if it leads to when my mind thinking about how can I get this from him? How can I buy this from him? How can I get the back? Now that's it. You stop there. But that's the Isser. I just want to say this answers a very question that the Chinuch has, and the Rambam doesn't, it won't bother us. Chinuch has the question, how can the Torah tell me don't desire? I mean, desires are something that comes up. And the interesting thing is that fits very well with Alter Rebbe and Tanya. It's going to come to your head. Okay, so you can say that what the answers means exactly what it says in Tanya. You may not be able to prevent the original thought, the original desire, but you can prevent harping on the desire. And that's what the issue is. And that's basically what he says. You do have control of your desires. And I believe that's what he means. I mean, that would fit very well with how the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. However, according to Rambam, it's not a question. There's nothing wrong. That's not the issue. This is not desiring. That's a skafia issue. It's not it has nothing to do with Leisus Ava. Leisus Ava is only if I let it go to step 2. The Shiur of Leisus Ava. The desire has to be such that I allow it to go to step 2. But it's a Shiur in my desire. When my desire reaches a level where I start thinking, how do I get it from this guy? How do I finagle it out of him? That's when you are over Leisus Ava. So therefore, the Chinuch's question doesn't apply to the Ram. Step 2 in this evolution of Taiva. If the Taiva progresses, that you actually attempt to buy it from him, and you work on buying it from him. However, if you only attempted, you were able to Leisus Ava again. But you're not able to Leisachmed. Because Leisachmed requires a new Shiur, a new step in your evolution of the Taiva. Where the Taiva now has to reach the point where you actually succeeded in getting it from him. It has to be that which leads you to the next step. In other words, that if you wouldn't get it from him, you may come to Gezelah. Every step has to be able to lead to the next step. That's why by Leisus Ava it has to be that you think of how am I going to get it? And then if you work on it, you're going to try to get it. And getting it, you have to actually get it, because if not, if you don't get it, then it has to be able to lead to Leisigza. That you're going to steal. That's the way the Rambam is presenting it's the development of Taiva. What your Torah is happening. So again, think. The Aveira is the Taiva. The Shiur that of Leis Achmed is buying it. It's a Shiur in the Aveira. It's when you know that I have put my effort in enough to buy it. Okay, maybe that's what the Mishnah means. So it's not a Lav Sheyesh B'Maisa. That's what the Rambam says. It's a Lav Sheyesh B'Maisa. There is no Maisa here. The Maisa is the Taiva. I have to buy it. That's because that's the Shiur. My father would always tell us this story, and I've heard this from others also, that somebody went into a person's house. He comes out and they say, the guy wanted to hit me. He says, how do you know? Because he hit me. But here this is the desire. So that's step 2. And again, what could it lead to? It can lead to the Gezelah. That's why the Torah says, stop right here. Don't go there. Now, if the process of this type, of course, a guy goes in and he's a professional thief, and he goes in and he steals things from people. Not every thief is either free alav. But if this person goes further, and he tried working his way through it, and he didn't. So now he goes and he steals. So the Taiva now went to step 3, and he stole. So even though Leisigzal is a lav on its own. It stands by itself in most cases, but in such a case, you're over 3 times. You're over 3 lav. Is because the taiva has developed to that level. But what's the level that Leisigzal can bring to? Because remember, the whole thing is this is the development of the taiva. Where does Leisigzal bring? Oh, so the Rambam has to add something that doesn't say in the source of the Rambam. The Rambam source is a medrash. I think it's a Mechilta, the Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and the Rambam source there doesn't say anything about killing. The Rambam has to add the possibility of killing, because otherwise, again, Leisigzal will not be in this series of development of a taiva. It has to develop further. Where can it develop further? If it can come to killing. So the Rambam is learning that Leisasava, Leisachmaid, and ultimately Leisigzal in this manner is all about taiva. The development of the taiva to next step, to next step, to next step. And that's why he doesn't say if you killed, you're over 4. Because, hey, I mean, there's simple answer because killing doesn't need anything else. No, but it still should have said that. And the answer is because it's not, because taiva, there's nothing to do after killing. After that, he's got it. The taiva has run its course. And that's the Lashon Sheziron Mechos Machshen Lasses Tachvula Kedei Liknes. And that's all these Lashonos that the Rambam says, Hey Chiyiknez, Shachoshe believe Hey Chiyiknez Dovas. How am I going to buy it? That's when you're able to sasava. Because taiva alone is not an issue. And that answers the other question that the Maggid Mishnah had, that I have an issue with. I have an issue with Kol Mado Rachman Leisava the Ovid Lemahani. So here, if you bought it, it should be Lemahani. The answer is there is no Lemahani on that. Because you're buying it is only a shear in the Aveira. It's not the Aveira. It's only a shear of what kind of a chimud we're talking about. So it's the chimud is not, there's no lemahani on the sale. It's a lemahani on the chimud. You can't undo that. Lemahani will not help over here. We don't say you have a lemahani on this.